Look who finally decided to wake up. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12.
12.
As we just discussed and had to double check on, of Popcorner, the unofficially not licensed at all movie podcast, pop culture podcast.
I would say we might do more than movies
Yeah.
at some point, but for now,
Hold
we're
your-
doing movies.
Hold your horses there on that one. And today we're going to be looking at the sequel to the 2017 film Happy Death Day, and this is the 2019 movie that, in my opinion, is very interesting, especially given that the scores went down as you look at review scores.
Really?
Not much, but it did. But before we get into that, I, of course, am Coleman, Falling Hurts on the channel, and this is Draven, or Buens, as you may know him on many platforms, including Pornhub.
That's especially the one.
That is the one that you would,
That's the biggest one you would know me from, if from anything else at all.
absolutely. But how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right,
Buddy
my
old pal?
man. You know, we just watched this movie. I'm feeling pretty good.
Feeling
I mean,
froggy?
you know, how are you? How are you, my friend?
How am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. Just kind of hanging out in life. Not really doing too much. Kind of waiting for the rain to stop. I'll put down some mulch in my front yard. I got it mowed last week.
Okay.
Gonna have to mow it again this weekend. Want to ram my head through a wall. Owning.
Well, let's, for the sake of the movie we're on here, if you're stuck in a time loop,
Okay.
what's the biggest thing you'd want to go do? You would have no repercussions. You would have no
Okay, same rules.
yeah,
like
same
you know,
rules.
if I die,
you
day
die at a
resets.
reverse. Yeah, reverse back to the
Okay.
beginning. What would be the number one thing you'd want to go do?
Let me think about this for a minute. Number one thing. Definitely, I would like anyone in my life that like is no longer a part of my life.
Yeah.
For whatever, whether it be like an ex-girlfriend or something.
Okay.
I definitely want to go see him and say, hey, look, doing pretty fucking good. I think that would, and then like if they like murder me, then it's cool, Not that they're going to, but like just in the off chance, like,
Man's got some interesting exes then apparently.
no, not really. Honestly, that's why they're not here. But there's nothing that's like, oh, I'm gonna do this and they're gonna fucking kill me. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I don't know. I would probably actually be inclined to go skydiving, but I don't know if I could set up skydiving in one day.
That was kind of my thing.
That was
That's
my
what I was thinking. Like if you
Get
would
it-
revert to me.
like something like maybe I would kill somebody.
Me?
Easy access.
Yeah. I mean, that works for me.
I don't know. I honestly, I couldn't tell you. I would probably find some freak accident that's going to happen and then like save all these people by doing the exact perfect thing I'm supposed to do.
So you look like a god.
So I look like a god to these people. And these people being fellow humans, mind you. And then I would just try to find a way to break the loop at the end of the day or something and
Okay, so
walk
you have
out
to,
of that day a hero.
you have to break the loop by dying. What is your choice of, killing yourself?
I have to kill myself?
Yeah.
Suicide by cop.
So by cop. All right. Okay.
So, do with that information what you will. I'm looking for 5 stars in GTA.
5 stars in GTA.
Yeah, I would be too afraid to do it any other way. No, realistically speaking, I'd probably just 12 gauge. Kurt Cobain myself. What about you? How would you kill yourself? What is this podcast already? Okay,
Listen.
no. Let's take it back a minute. What would you do in your beloved day of mini?
I mean, like I said, I was already kind of preparing for if you were to reverse the question on me. That's why I
Yeah.
asked you
Yeah.
first. That way I could think about it. But my thoughts were going to skydiving too because I have a huge scare of, heights.
Yeah.
So I figured, if I'm going to die, if I die and it reloops anyway, let's go fight that fear.
You know what my worst fear would be
What's that?
in these situations? Not dying instantly. Like, having to live, okay, freak accident, I know, and this wouldn't be a good example, but, like, say you jump from somewhere, you're like, oh, yeah, this is going to kill me, my day is going to restart, but then you don't jump from somewhere high enough. And then your bones shatter. Your organs are internally bleeding. All of this sensation. You can't move. so you can't finish the job.
Yeah.
But you're not dead. I mean, you'll probably
Like I
eventually,
said, you'll die
but it would be
eventually.
slow and painful.
Just make sure you do it correctly then.
I guess
Tree had no problem.
you're not wrong. She didn't even have to try some of them times. But okay, yeah. So, what's your method of choice? I have to ask.
Honestly, that's actually a tough question. You know, I've never actually consistently sat down and go, you know, what is the way that I want to go out in? But I mean, it's like one of those
You make
things.
it sound like I think about suicide by cop option.
Yeah, I mean,
like often.
he had that pretty quickly. So, I mean, now for me, I don't really do pain, but at the same time, and you know, if you go, it's whatever, do it real quick, you just wake back up, you know, you're good to go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, something that would be instant. So, you know, from a giant, like from a fall, maybe from like just a boom gunshot, you know, to the face.
What do you think the worst way to die would be? Not suicide, but what do you think the worst way to die would be?
Ugh.
Personally,
Drowning or
drowning.
burning?
No, actually, burning is one of the ones that like I think would be a good one. I really do. Like, I mean, they talk about how once you get burns that are so bad, you just don't feel it anymore.
That's cold.
No.
When you get too cold,
When
you
you
just
burn
become
your
numb, and then
well,
you just.
okay, yeah, sure. I would love to just fly to the Arctic real quick and kill myself, but I'd rather just like catch my house on fire and sit in it or something.
This is quite the podcast we've
This is
created
a great,
today.
great start.
Hey, to be fair, it correlates to the movie. You
It
know, the Tree has to end up a lot of times killing herself. You know, she ends up, you know, doing a bunch of different things that she wouldn't normally do because it all ties back to the loop.
Yeah.
And we're just talking hypothetical here. If we had to loop in our lives, what would we do to restart the loop? And also, what would we do with that time? Even though with our character Tree here, most of the time, especially in the sequel, is more so trying to figure out not really figure out what's going on, but more so fix what she wants. Like,
Yeah.
get back to her either old dimension or, you know, stay in the new dimension and just get rid of the loop entirely.
Right.
As for the first one, it was kind of trying to figure out what's going on, who's the killer. This one
Yeah.
was more so her just being like, let's just end this loop.
Yeah. This one, like the first movie was like it was almost like a reverse murder mystery or
Yeah.
like a high concept murder mystery, where this one was more of like the kind of like scientific morality of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get into it's a multiverse movie. Like, I mean, it doesn't deal with a multiverse outside of earlier on in the movie with Ryan.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is like they talk about how you're in a pocket, different dimension, like a parallel universe. But I guess with that being said, to kind of quickly, I think we should do not like a summary of the movie, but like basic concept of this movie to anyone who is just watching this episode and not watching the movie for whatever reason. This movie picks up almost immediately
After the first one.
after the first one.
It's
Actually,
literally a day after.
it starts even right at the ending scene as Ryan, he wakes up in his car, who he had been staying out there because Carter has been making him stay out of the room because he had Tree over.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's coming in, he's like, oh, I'm tired, I can't stay in the car again. And then, you know, he goes through his day, and of course this is all new to us as part of the sequel. We're thinking, oh, we're following a new character here, all fun and games, just like the first movie, but kind of spoofing on it just a little bit. We're seeing how he's kind of just like a meh character too. And he's going through his day and doing things. Very specific things are happening, and it's setting it up like it's going to be a very similar premise to the first movie.
Yeah.
And then, you know, of course, time loop stuff happens, and you know, he dies at the end of the day. You're thinking, okay, we got to find out who's killing him, all this and that. And then we get to pretty much the end of the movie. Not the end of the movie. The end of, like, the sequence, and, you know, he confronts Tree and Carter after he dies, right? You know,
Yeah.
and then that kicks off Tree being involved once again, and then you realize he's made this crazy science
machine,
contraption.
the science machine, and it was also, it cuts, like I told you in the original one that we watched with the first film, you know, one of your main complaints about the original Happy
Yes.
Death Day was it doesn't really talk about the time loop at all. It doesn't really even
Right.
remotely touch on the subject, but that's what this movie's about. And, you know, it relates to the, like, you know, him being
Yep.
like some sort of like scientist college nerd on top of his group, and they make this machine that ends up creating the time loop.
Right.
And then that's where this movie is kind of focusing on, this time loop and them trying to figure out how it works and like how to fix it. And
they pretty much quickly realized that where they were trying to slow time, they basically had been creating time loops, which originally targeted Tree for whatever reason, whether it was just close proximity somewhere on campus, or did they ever really explain why it latched to her?
not necessarily, it didn't.
But regardless,
It kind of just went to her and then it hopped on to him.
right. And then once she completed hers, then it hopped to him, and then as they're going to try to fix things or maybe hopefully set things right, the university tries to shut it down, and then we get kicked off into our regular old main protagonist, good old Teresa Tree.
Yeah, Tree.
And for the rest of the movie, once again, she is the protagonist. And this time around, we're dealing with new world, new rules, with a lot of the same players, but nothing is to be expected. Meaning, like, characters like Carter and... what is the sorority leader's name?
Danielle.
Danielle.
I remembered it this time.
I said Daniel when I read it. Like, those characters who had never even met in the first one are now dating. In this universe.
Basically everything that
Flipping
you learned,
things on their head.
Basically everything you thought, like everything that was canon in the first movie is now just flipped upon its head, and different characters are acting differently. Different characters are hating like characters they loved in the old ones. The ones like spoilers for the original Happy Death Day. Lori was the killer in the original, and then in this version of this time loop where she
has no motive.
Yeah, she has no motive. Actually, Lori is just friends with Tree. Like she has no reason to kill her, and she's like, okay, cool. Like,
it's kind of sad.
It's interesting to like, and like it's really cool too because like even we're getting a little too far ahead of this, but like at the very end too, like when Tree, before she goes back to the original timeline, like when she sees like Lori like getting carried away, she was just like, yeah, I'm sorry for everything and stuff, like kind of like talking to like what she wished she could say to the original version of her in her timeline. But yeah, it's kind of the synopsis of the movie is basically everything you said, and then up to that point, we have all these different versions of characters, and like there's many different scenarios that would never happen in our old movie canon, but now it's happening in this because everything's flipped on its head.
Right, and then we've got the big one.
What?
The mom.
Yeah, the mom
That's
comes
the
back.
Big decider in this universe. So the mom is not dead in this timeline.
But again, it comes with the factor of Carter being together with Danielle,
Right.
so then she has to pick between the two. And, she fights back and forth, but then eventually she does end up being like, okay, we're going with the original timeline in the end. And then during all this, of course, you still have your classic killer. Who's the killer?
Who is the killer?
And just like the original, it still has that like crazy dude. But in this one, he's not even a threat.
Right.
He's
No,
literally...
it's honestly just like a, hey, you have to be here. Let me ask you something before we get to, before we start breaking down our thoughts throughout the movie, as we've done our summary here a little bit. Did we ever find out who... Oh, yeah, we did. Never mind. I'm dumb. I already remember. Doesn't matter. It was answered in the beginning. I was going to say, who's trying to kill Ryan? Ryan was trying to kill Ryan. I forgot.
So, with the synopsis there, let's actually dive in and talk about some thoughts here.
Okay.
So, from the get-go, he's never watched it, of course. He never watched the original until we watched it last week and did our podcast on it. So this one he was completely fresh to. I've watched the original before, and I've watched this one before. But this one I was very, very, very foggy on. I didn't even remember the killer up until the reveal when it showed him. And I'm like, oh. So this one was kind of basically like watching a new movie. Like there were certain scenes and stuff that I remembered, like the mom coming back. But for the most part, 90% of this movie was new to me too again.
Right.
So with that in mind, Ryan is the one who starts us off here. And we've talked about this a little bit, but for podcast purposes.
Right.
Ryan. So he's kind of introduced as we're following him.
Seemingly as the new protagonist.
As the new protagonist.
That's one of my notes.
And with that in mind, would you have loved the whole movie to be about Ryan, or would that be a negative if they would have done that?
Okay. With the way they had set it up, I liked it.
Okay.
Okay, so first off, I love the fake out that they committed to it for so long.
Yeah. It was like a 10-15 minute gag.
There was a good bit of like, okay, is it going to be Ryan as the protagonist? Is it not? And I enjoy how it handled I don't want to say our legacy characters, but like our protagonists from the first movie, Carter and Tree. They basically get brought in pretty quickly. With it doesn't need to do all the explanation stuff we already understand.
Yeah.
But he sits them down pretty quickly, and they kind of already understand what's going on because they just went through this in the day prior for Carter and in the weeks prior for Tree.
Yeah.
And so they completely understand. They trust him right off the bat. And then, of course, everyone's mind's racing, especially us just watching it.
Mm-hmm.
We can see it pretty closely from their perspectives that it seems like, they already feel like they're in for a nightmare. And then I just overall, I really enjoy the attention to detail from which I know it's like they recreated a lot of these scenes already, but the clothing and the way these characters would act after, for Tree dealing with it she said she died 11 times.
Yeah, 11 times
in the first movie. Basically she dealt with that day 12 different times altogether.
No, what I also really love is that it goes throughout this whole movie, not just the part we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
But a lot of the characters, they felt so true to the first movie. They didn't lose their character. They kept the charisma
Right.
and they kept their their personalities throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And just like the first movie, they react perfectly. Especially Tree. When she finds out she gets stuck back in
Yes.
the April 18th day
No
again.
time was lost.
She was just immediately ticked. She was just screaming at everyone. She was, yeah. So they did really well with, again, our characters like the first movie. And I know I asked you, but in my personal opinion, if we would have kept following Ryan, I think it could have worked. But,
that's what I was going to get to. I know I didn't say that part, but as I said, if it treated the rest of the movie like it treated how our protagonists from the first movie were still mainly involved.
Yeah,
in the
still
plot,
involved
I would have
very
been
well.
fine with it from his perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
If that was it.
I'm going to say, I agree there. I just think that dude, Tree was so good in the first movie. Coming into this, I feel like I would have been sad for us not to follow her again because she was such a pivotal, point to the story.
Right.
And without her being a main point in the sequel would be kind of weird. But at
Okay.
the same time, I would have seen where they could have taken it without her being the main center because, we already did her loop. Passing
Right.
it on to someone else, different story, different character, different, traumas, would have made sense. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy we went with the way we went, where Ryan did get a lot of development from the first movie, where the first movie he literally had a single line and that was it. And even a lot of the other side characters, they get a lot more characteristics and a lot more time to get
yes.
their time out and get their character pumped out.
I really enjoy that.
But Tree and Carter were still kind of the big focus here, especially Tree. Tree was a bigger focus, I feel like, in this one. Obviously Tree was the main one in the first one, but Carter, I feel like, was more important in the first one because he was the only one that really kind of eventually tried to help her. As for this one, they kind of all were in on it.
Yeah. How did you feel about? I know we've talked about how old characters are given new life in this movie.
Yeah.
Whether it be from the alternate personalities or just more screen time in general. Like Ryan's character, it's still him.
Yeah.
But more time in general in the beginning. How do you feel about the new characters that are introduced? For instance, the head of the educational, him.
Best character.
He's just a plot device. I understand that. Or the two.
Yeah, the
new
two
friends that are
scientists,
helping.
Yeah. To me, those type of characters are, they're not bad, but they're not really. They don't.
They're
really
a little
matter.
light.
Yeah,
they were a
don't-
little light.
Yeah,
They felt like how the characters that we were talking about
Now.
they get more screen time.
were in the
They
first
felt
movie.
like how they were in the first movie.
Yeah, where they're not bad, but they're kind of just there to get the plot forward.
Right, yeah.
That's all they were really there for. Some of them had a few funny quips and moments.
Yeah.
But
My yoo-hoo. Did you drug my drink? Yeah.
yeah, but other than that,
I couldn't tell you their names.
Yeah, I was gonna say I couldn't tell you either.
Yeah.
But all in all, yeah, the new characters were okay.
Yeah.
The cast was still
was
10
fun.
out of 10, just like the first one. I loved all the actors. The cast did great.
Yeah, I thought it. I thought the movie, as far as acting and cast goes, I think it is exceptionally well done. I think. I'm trying to think of how to say this. I think the pairings in this movie are interesting. Like the way they pair characters. That obviously through the first movie we saw it all through Tree's perspective.
Yeah.
So in this movie, mostly the same, but we got to see different interactions, like Carter and Danielle,
Yeah, which is the thing
And-
you've never seen in the first movie.
Right.
That didn't happen once.
and or even Tree and Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
We see these different characters interacting in different ways. It's interesting to see how these characters interacting, especially when it moves into like the main chunk of the movie where we're in the alternate timeline,
Yeah.
where it's like these characters are kind of reacting to a different version of Tree than what's actually been experienced by us as the viewers of the first movie.
Yeah.
And that was one of my favorite things with the characters, and I think it's pulled off really well for both a writing department as far as like how they would interact, and then also acting, of course. So, but yeah, I don't know.
I would say just like the first movie, though, I feel like Tree was a big standout. I feel like she's so good, dude.
Yes, a
She-
lot of charisma.
Yeah, like I say, such a legend to the actor because she really brought her A game and just having fun with the character. Just as
Yeah.
like I feel like again we always say every podcast like all the characters like the main character, which is usually a final girl because we've done a lot of horror movies.
Right.
It always just seems like they get to have a lot of fun with their characters, and you can tell, you can see that they're having fun. They're being creative and having a blast, and that's what you want to see in a movie.
Right. Now, if I may consult my notes here for the next point here.
Let's see it.
We've talked about the protagonist change. We've talked a little bit about some of the genre shift, from the first movie to the second movie. So I'd like to focus back on that for just a second before we get more into like the meat of the movie again.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first movie, kind of thriller, murder mystery, reverse murder mystery,
Yeah.
elevated stuff, right? This movie, it's a sci-fi film. Straight up, it is.
It kind of is.
It's I don't want to say time travel, but it's a
Honestly-
it's a multiverse. Again, mystery, but it's more focused on like a kind of a multiverse comedy
Yeah.
in a way.
Well, it's one of those
And
things.
it finds the fun.
It's one of those things too, where like the first one was really like the time loop was there, but the first movie was really focused on trying to figure out who the killer was. Like that was the whole point of the movie.
Yes.
But this movie, it's kind of like the killer was kind of just a side factor. Like they're just trying to figure out how to get this loop to stop. And
Right.
like obviously the killers and the killings are important to the movie because you want to have all your characters alive when you finish the loop. But
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like the first one felt like what the main thing was finding out who this killer was.
Right, because she at the time thought that that's how she could. Well, I mean,
That's
it
what she
was.
thought was.
That's how
Yeah,
she broke the
but
loop.
Like I say, the loop was what she thought was happening because of the killer, and if she killed the killer, the loop would stop, which it happened. But in this one, like I said, she did. I mean, like I said, the killer mattered, but it was more so just wanting to, because her main goal for a while is to stay in the dimension she got sent to because her mom's alive.
Right.
So she just wants to stop the loop and quit it. That way, she gets to spend time with her mom again.
Yes.
And dude, I really love that. Like, I know we're not like super diving into it right now, but I just love the stuff that it has in there about like her, like going through her phone and seeing all these pictures
That
and,
she
like,
doesn't remember.
She doesn't remember, and she's
Yeah.
like, I'm living in someone else's life that's not mine.
Which they talk about how she's pushed out the tree that lived in this universe in
Yeah.
a way. And like it does make I mean I think between this and like the need to keep these characters like because even at the end of the movie with Lori, once they realize this is the final night she's going to be there, she's trying to make sure she lives. And she kisses Carter at the end. And then even with the main timeline, they're trying to, like the original, they're trying to keep Ryan alive and do these different things. The stakes in this movie are elevated in a way that's really interesting because we basically kind of have two sets of characters that are being impacted. And one of them is mostly just from the perspective of, I don't want to ruin someone else's seemingly perfect life as far as this girl's concerned, where she could have Ryan or Carter, and she could have her mom.
Yeah, she wants to have both, but you
And
can't have it all.
she gives that, in a way, she almost gives that to that original girl, original version of her that's in that universe as she leaves, and they fixed the loop or whatever. Really interesting stuff. Like I said, it really raises the stakes. It keeps things interesting, I would say. And to me, that's where the first movie is like, it's pretty good. The stakes are, hey, I want to live. So, but to me, it's whenever the protagonist is thinking of someone else, that's always way more compelling to me.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
And that's what this movie was kind of all about, was her thinking of a lot of other characters.
Right,
And
right.
like I said, I mean, the first one you had stuff like that, but I feel like this one, there's so many different characters, there's so many different timelines, and when one character gets axed off, they don't want to finish the time loop. They want to make sure everyone's okay.
Right.
And they did it in the first movie with Carter, but the thing I loved about this one is that like she was away with her mom, and like the mom kind of gave Tree a little advice talk.
Yeah.
And then she saw on the news that Carter died in the hospital when he was trying to save Lori.
Right.
And then she ends up just like driving into that power plant, and like, because like the thing is counting down to finish the time loop and cancel it to where it would stop, but Carter was dead. So she just drives into the power plant and then stops the power. Oh, it turns off all the power around the campus.
That is
As for the first one where he just gets his neck snapped and then she just kills herself.
She kills herself anyway.
Like, yeah. I think that one was. I think the sequels for Carter dying was a little bit more impactful.
Yeah, I agree. Trying to think of how I want to say this. If you have something to say, bring it up, because I have a way that I want to ask you something, but I don't know if I know how to articulate it properly just yet. So if you have something you want to start going with, then I just need to formulate
your thoughts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing, like I said, we were talking about just kind of the different vibes of the first movie and the second movie and all that.
Yes.
And one of the things I really like about the sequel that the first one doesn't do a whole lot of is just, I mean, we kind of briefly already talked about it, but just the fact that all our other characters that were side characters in the first movie get so much fleshed out, and like you really start to love these other characters as well. But just the fact that they make it to where it doesn't overshine Tree, and Tree is still the main star, the main protagonist here, and the way that she gets to take on a lot of the traumas that were created in the first one, and then like come back to it to where, you know, she wakes up on the 18th again. And like I said, I love how, you know, it was such a thing of like nostalgia, even though we just watched it like last week, like just her waking up on the 18th again and just,
you are gay.
Like just seeing her go through all that again and just like, you know, being totally fed up with it.
Me
like,
when I look in the mirror.
Ew. But it was just so nostalgic, and I don't know, it's telling when a movie we literally just watched a week ago can like make you feel that.
I know.
Isn't that weird? And I know you felt that too, because like I heard you're like, you know, your little noises. You were like, "Yo,"
you make me sound like I'm a goblin. Like my
little noise. I mean, you always do like, you know, that thing you always do. That's
what do you mean by that?
It's what you did when we were watching. I was just like, okay, like he gets it.
Yeah. But the sense of something I talk about in my game reviews, is the setting being a character of its own. The USG Ishimura for Dead Space, that space station is kind of like a character of its own.
Yeah.
Whether it be any tiny little creek in the distance, whether it be the full-blown automated systems talking to you as you're walking through it, or even just, you know, notes that you're finding about the kind of lifestyle and culture on the ship that really just puts you in the mind space of being there. It's immersive in that sense. And I think the college setting, even though we hardly see any classes after the first couple minutes of the first movie, I think it does really well at being a good college movie too.
Yeah, for sure.
If nothing else, by the portrayal of the characters. Like, these are meant to be smart characters for sure, because these are like, what? They're like nurses and fucking scientists.
Yeah, nurses, scientists. Did we ever figure out what Carter is?
You know, he's smart.
I mean, you know he's smart, but like
I don't know that it ever specifically says.
I can say I don't think so. But in Tree, all you really know is that she's in the Kappa house.
Right.
And like she was kind of like a total diva, like, you know, that's what she used to be like in her past.
Right.
But she's no longer like that, of course.
Right. Well, she's obviously taking a medical class.
Yeah.
Because she's
well, you know, she was kind of with the teacher to get past that, though. So I mean,
true. So maybe it was just a science credit.
I also love that in their new universe when she sees the doctor and then she was talking about to him like, oh, you know, she mentioned about the class or whatever, and he's like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
So I always love that. and Xbox noises. But I always loved that because they did the nod there. And with this one, did you know who the killer was? Did you
like
guess?
officially?
Yeah,
like I didn't know.
I
but,
know you
like,
didn't know, but did you have a guess in your mind?
I mean,
Or did you just kind of like went with it because the first one you didn't guess in the slightest?
yeah, I didn't guess. Well, I think the first movie subverts pretty hard.
Yeah.
Uh,
That is one thing the first movie does a lot better is the killer.
yeah,
I love the killer in this one, but I feel like the setup for the
definitely
killer...
not the focus.
Yeah.
Of this movie.
I think the setup for the reveal of who the killer was in the first one was a lot better. Like it was done.
Yeah.
Like
Well, this one
the
was
seedlings
literally
were there.
I don't know. I like the way that she knew before he even unmasked.
I agree with that. That's
Badass
one thing.
moment.
Yeah, because like she's just like get down or whatever, and then like when you see the baby mask and she has the gun, she's like Gregory, and then that's who it is. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I knew ever since Lori was killed in the hospital.
Yeah, because
That's when I
hospital
knew.
person. Yeah,
That's when I knew.
I guess that's fair. I mean, if you think about it, yeah. I guess,
Yeah.
Though I mean, I know they didn't do it, and they didn't really plant any seedlings there for you to maybe think about it. But we talked about it a little bit upstairs. But one thing is, what if Carter would have been the killer in this universe? Wouldn't that be wild?
We did talk about it a bit, and for reference, one thing I said was that because he was the character that we were seeing the most variable from the parallel universes, being the nice, sweet guy in the one, and he's still super, at the core sweet in the other, but he's dating
Yeah, he's dating
Danielle and doing all these different, whatever things. I really thought that's where it was going to go. Like, Danielle was the good person maybe
Now
this time
he's-
around, and maybe he is like the secret bad person.
Yeah.
I was thinking that. It didn't last. Eventually, it made me realize that it was just that it's another version of him, but it's one that she doesn't have. Tree.
Yeah, just one that she's
So
not dating.
that was his role in the story, and I quickly kind of realized that. But it would be interesting for sure.
One thing I do like a lot about this movie too is like in the first movie, that Carter takes Tree in because she's drunk and he doesn't want her to puke on her, like choke on her puke or like get into trouble and maybe die or get into trouble.
Right.
And a thing that I liked about this one is this alternative Carter, who obviously has a girlfriend, Danielle. He still does the same thing. He still brings her in and stuff, which makes you think that like even in the original timeline, he didn't bring her home to like maybe get together with her. He actually cared to make sure that she didn't get hurt. And I actually really dug that.
Didn't puke on her vomit.
Oops.
So I do have a negative that I want to get into, and that's what I was kind of thinking about how I want to say it. But one thing while we're talking about what you're saying, I think this movie does a really good job as a sequel to elevate the first movie.
Okay.
It's whether it's the little references or things like what you said. Like he gives her the same line about not wanting to throw up, and all this different things, and it reinforces the goodness of characters from the first movie, and then also
I mean, it gives you another even though they're not the exact copy paste same character, you kind of see another side of the character that maybe there's still the
like
characters.
Lori.
Yeah, like Lori. Like maybe
Lori's a great example.
Yeah, like maybe Lori was actually a kind soul and stuff, but like Tree pushed her over the edge maybe.
Yeah,
or,
she was like, hey, where's the birthday? Where's the cupcake?
Because even in this universe, Lori, because one of the motives in the original was Lori wanted to kill Tree because one of the motives was being that Tree was together with the doctor guy.
Yeah.
And even in this version, she still is. She's actually with him.
Yeah,
because Tree's not there.
Tree wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe these things aren't completely opposite of each other. Maybe they're still the characters, personalities and thoughts. It's just without Tree's insert into their lives that maybe this is kind of like what they are and where they're at without Tree being in there.
Really, I mean, thinking about it from the perspective of the big difference is the mother being alive or not.
Yeah.
Tree being a completely different person.
Character, yeah.
Danielle doesn't feel as threatened
Mm-hmm.
as the Kappa leader by the other supposed diva in the household.
Yeah.
So she's less intense, and that's where we see a potentially nicer side of her.
Yeah.
Even though she still is
Yeah, she's
cheating
still-
on Carter
yeah,
and
she's
different
still
things like that.
trash, but-
Still a bad person, but maybe that shows how much influence Tree actually had on her.
Yeah.
Not as big of a deal, but then you see characters like Lori, who in one movie is murderous. This movie she's not.
Yeah, I really think that's what they were going for, though. Like in a universe where Tree wasn't the trash character.
Right. And once again, that adds into the idea of the first movie. It just reinforces how big of a change Tree goes through and had when her mother died.
Yeah.
So, very interesting and sad if you think about it from that perspective.
Sorry that we kind of traversed to this conversation, but you were saying something about a negative. So
yes.
You were, sorry.
Well, yeah. I was getting to that.
Okay. I know. I just kind of brought it into this conversation.
I'm kidding. But no. So I don't know if you have anything specifically you'd like to talk about for a negative. But how did you feel about the pacing of this movie?
The pacing? I didn't have any problems with it.
Oh, I thought it was all over the place.
Really? I didn't really have any problems with it.
It's, okay, how do I want to say this? It's nothing specifically in this movie happens that's like, oh, I didn't like that. It's just, it feels like the rate of things happening, like, it feels like we go from a scene where there's maybe a tense moment, like, say, after the basketball game, in the hallway or something, right? And then it feels like the next scene we're brainstorming, like it's the group, we're putting our minds together, we're thinking, we're gonna figure things out, and it's back to some death compilation or something like that. The movie's pacing in the speed of these scenes was all over the place, in my opinion. Once again, I feel everything needed to happen.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like anything was per se rushed. I wouldn't say it's anything feels completely negative like that, but it definitely, the movie gives me whiplash. In a lot of ways, in ways where it's like, I'm like, oh my god, we're going fast. Feels like the movie's about to end, right? Mm-hmm. But then it slows down there at the end, and we're like, oh, we still have a whole nother day because we got to restart the day again. Which the first movie did this too, but the first movie was fine because it was a great build up and then a fake out and then the last section.
That is one thing I really loved about the first movie. The first movie fake out
ramps up so well in that sense. And then this movie is it feels like we have three different, we build three different endings throughout the course of this movie. Because I remember we were halfway through the movie, I was like, oh man, the movie's about to end already? And it didn't. I mean, it wasn't. I was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
I guess when it comes to pacing, I mean, it was a funny scene and stuff, but I feel I guess they just wanted to make it obviously hit a mark and make it a little bit longer. But when the machine's getting ready and they're getting ready to go for it, but then the head dean comes in and they take the machine away last second and they have to go and get it back.
Yeah.
That scene was a little, or Danielle's in there pretending to be blind. That scene was,
did you think any of that needed to happen?
Not really.
It felt, I mean, the movie was...
I'm not complaining about it because, it was fun and, watching it, I was like, all right, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, it's one of those things that, it didn't really need to happen because I don't really think anything really happens, importantly there, right? Because, they bring it back and then immediately start it back up.
Yeah. Not that I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
I would be glad to be corrected. I think because this was a time thing for the movie to make it to where when they start working on it again, it was later. That way the hospital scene could come back into play. That way, I think that's what the reasoning for it was.
That was definitely true.
Because after that is when they go to the hospital and then you find out about who the killer is and stuff, and all that stuff goes down. So I think it was kind of a plot to push it forward to being nighttime. But
I would have preferred something I don't know. Wouldn't even have cared if it was a plot device where somehow, some way, she was knocked out and taken to the hospital or something.
Yeah,
something weird.
I think that would be the only pacing issue I had, is just because that was kind of just filler to
get. When I said there's 3 false starts for the end, that was definitely the last of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I agree.
That's the only one I can think of that I had a problem with. I would say.
That is my number one criticism of this movie. The only secondary minor criticism is that this movie, a lot of its emotional resonance doesn't work unless you've seen the first movie.
Yeah.
Which is fine for the most part, but I think a good rule for a movie is treat it like anyone can watch it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
But same issue with the first movie. The first movie, they don't explain their rules enough. This movie explains the rules in detail, and I like it. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't, the first movie, a lot of the emotional resonance is dealing with the acceptance and grief of the mother's death.
Yeah.
Not I mean, it's here. It is here because she's more dealing with the idea of like, I have to once again choose to let her go. But at this time, it's more of a choice.
Yeah, it's like an actual choice between,
And that way I like it, but it's like, a lot of this stuff would have been furthered a lot better had it been her problem originally. The movie starts off with Ryan.
Yeah.
We're saving Ryan. This is movie's about Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan. That's actually hilarious. But then we, of course, cut back over to Tree, and then, she kind of secondarily is like, oh, well, if this is just, random and it had nothing to do with some cosmic reason why I'm selected, then what was me dealing with my mother's death about then? All this and that. And then it kind of, nowhere near does it invalidate the first movie, but it definitely, like, being so separated from the first movie, especially if you hadn't seen it in 2 years or ever, it lessens the impact of some of the decision making at the end of the movie as far as like, hey, my mom is dead, I have to give that up.
Yeah.
It does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I mean, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I do agree though that like it's one of those movies where like you have to see the first one to really get the full extent of the whole movie for the sequel, because there's so many seeds that are planted in the first film, especially with the mother. And like, you come to watch the second one, like, okay, that like her mom's dead, and like they talk about it, but you don't really get the emotion that you would have gotten if you watched the full first movie and you see like all the struggles she goes through and like how much she actually cared and misses her mom.
Right.
Like you just go into this one, you're like, okay, she's dead. Oh, she's back. Cool. Like,
and it's a really touching scene when she sees that she's alive, but we never, in this movie, we don't see that low point before we get to the...
I don't know, it's one of those things where like I agree that a sequel or, a trilogy or whatever, you want to make it to where anyone can watch it. Like either it be your fan base from the previous films, or it be just a new looker upon that have never seen the old ones and just want to jump in because they saw this was coming out and thought it was cool.
Right.
But it's also one of those things that like I don't want them to change like the plot or their ideas and stories they had planned in the first film just to cater to a new audience too.
I respect that.
So like, it's one of those things where I'm split in between because I love a lot of the things they've done here, but I also agree that you have to really watch the first one to get the whole picture. I'm indifferent.
Well, let me confuse you a little bit more.
Right.
With that being said, this is one of my favorite sequels ever made.
Really?
Yes.
Like out of every movie you've ever seen?
Like sequels in general. I'm not talking like, okay, Iron Man and Thor. Like, yes, that came in the MCU after.
Do you mean like a pair of movies, not just like a sequel, but like a pair of like 1 and 2? Or you mean like when you say a sequel, do you just mean the second movie in the franchise? Like that's their favorite one?
Yeah,
or
like a follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, like definitely like, it's a great duology. I mean, I think these two movies, I think especially with the idea of like them being different genres almost, but with sharing so much DNA, whether it be cast, directors, different things like that, I think it's a great duology of films as well. But I'm talking specifically about sequel. My favorite movie of all times is a sequel.
Yeah,
Aliens.
Yeah, Aliens. Yeah.
And that's not knocked out, in my opinion. But that movie is completely circumvented by the issue that I have in this movie. At the beginning of the movie of Aliens, there is a debriefing of the Marines where Ellen Ripley basically, in few words, recounts the events of the first movie and basically catches everyone up to speed. And it basically, the way it's told in that one, is like a horror story to them. So it doesn't feel out of place like this isn't like a previously on. It just feels like it fits like, hey, I went through this. This is the hell you're going into.
It's a Days of Our Lives scenario.
Oh my
Previously
God.
on Alien.
Previously on. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Previously on the Xenomorph side.
Switches perspective.
Xenomorph. I'm your mother.
Damn.
And I am also related to you by being your sister. So not only am I related by mother, I am also your sister.
Is there a reference I'm not getting?
I don't know. That's how like soap operas work. It's like I'm your mom,
I was like,
and I'm also your sister because your dad
he wild.
he cracked.
He cracked. But
So soap operas go wild.
you know, I'll take your word for it, brother. But yeah, just overall, I think that this is probably one of the best sequels ever made, and a great grouping of movies. I hope they do make a third one.
I mean, the creator wants to,
Right.
so I mean, I hope we do see one day because I would love to revisit this universe
Right.
and our characters again.
I would like to, yeah. But I don't know. It's just I don't know. Do we?
The biggest positive that I had for like both of these movies is the comedy. The comedy is literally spot on.
Yes, I'm
for-
glad you mentioned that because when we talked about genre shifts, I wanted to also talk about the heavier emphasis on comedy in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it does it so tastefully that it doesn't disturb the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
Even though the tone already changes from one film to the next, it doesn't feel like the comedy was the reason why.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, I understand.
Scream 3 would like to know your location.
Man brings this up every time we do something.
I'm gonna.
Man just wants to hate on my franchise.
Not your franchise. That one movie.
I know.
I will watch any other one of them ever, always again. But I will not watch that one ever again.
I just think that's one of the things that this franchise does very well, though, is the comedy. Because though I feel like this one kind of perks it up a little bit more, the first one still had the comedy in it, and I feel like, you know, especially for like Tree and stuff, it carries over, and it's still the same type of comedy you would have seen in the first one.
Right.
In this one, like Tree
Yep.
didn't change her character to be stupider or be funnier or whatever. She still had that same charisma, that same, you know, crack jokes. And
Yeah,
like,
we've got like slapstick humor.
Mhm.
We've got parody, you know, where it seems like, you know, Danielle in the first movie, where it's like she's like the ruthless sorority leader. That's
Yeah.
like
that's a trope.
that's a trope.
Yeah.
Like that's 100, and like it's present in this one as well. And then
Like I said, Tree's my favorite though, dude. Just because, like, even the like the death montages. I'm pretty sure she had
that's
one
what I was
in-
gonna say. Was
she-
the physical comedy was the other one?
She even had that in the first film, but in like this one, like my favorite one is just the skydiving one. She literally is just like literally just in a bikini, and she's just like F it, just jumps off, and she's just like flipping off.
I still don't understand why she had to die.
What do you mean?
Okay, so I understand
Well,
the
it was
idea.
to reset the days.
I
so
know, I
you
get
to-
that, but if we already established that at the end of the day, it would reset anyway.
It wasn't really that. It was more so like she knew it was going to reset because the killer would kill her anyway. That was more of the idea, is that she was just going to die anyway.
But if she was in the room, like if they're just in their little study room all day,
I mean, I guess they
You know
never
what I
really.
mean?
I know
Like,
they never really played it on that. But
seemingly they trusted everyone in that room. So
Yeah.
if she's in the room, if she's
I
locked in the
guess.
room working on different, you know, equations.
that was just kind of the reasoning, though.
I
Just,
know,
just like the first one, like how she kept dying no matter what she did. She probably just assumed like I'm gonna die either way. So.
Right. Yeah.
But you know that montage of just her. Like,
I mean, it's worth it for the montage alone. So I agree.
it's so good.
But it was just a little like I wonder if we really poked at this, what would happen. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed the comedy of this movie.
I agree.
Do you have a favorite moment?
Oh, man, favorite moment? I
have one.
I'm just thinking of the montage right now. That's what's in my head. Just all the kills.
You
that
like the
she does.
montage?
Yeah.
I like the I like the Scream callback of when she's going back to the first movie.
That was beautiful.
You know, and she's reliving that same day once again. She's, you know, you've got the car alarms, you've got the, you know, the lady with the
she like walks out and then like I love the global warming. She like takes the clipboard and just
Yep.
chucks it, and then like the
sorry.
she's like a simple no would be okay.
Yeah.
And then like again, like you said earlier,
You are gay.
just walks past.
And then he's just like, and I love that. Like another thing, I'm glad they got everyone to come back for this movie once again.
Yeah,
We
just
talked
like the
about actors.
simple, yeah.
like characters that were bigger in the first movie, like
Aren't even like relevant in
Aren't
this
even-
movie.
yeah.
Like the gay guy. Like
love
again, I
that.
was gonna mention that for another funny scene is like where they're like, oh, where are we gonna go that's safe? Just go to the fucking basketball game and there's
Yeah.
just baby mask everywhere and they all just look at him.
Yeah.
They're like, really?
yeah. So,
But
yes.
that scene too, because it does a call back to him because she looks behind, and then you see the gay guy like with another dude, and she's
Right.
like, "Yeah."
And with that, like, it's like this movie is kind of a feel good movie. Both of them are, in the sense that at the end of the day, it's like she goes on the perfect run. Like it's like a not a speed running thing, but it's like the idea that she's like doing everything right
Yeah,
on the
everything
final
perfectly.
day.
Yeah, everything perfectly.
The perfect run.
And usually it ends up not being the final day. Usually
Yes.
they do a little
Yeah, the
reverse there.
first movie especially, they trick that out. But
All that work can just to immediately just get yoinked.
I know, and I really enjoy.
I don't think it does it in this one, does it? Because like her
What?
perfect run was like when she talks to her mom at like the restaurant.
And she
like,
get and then
like-
she, yeah.
She didn't die that night, I don't think.
When she talks at the restaurant,
Yeah. Doesn't
isn't that
she?
when she? Is that when she takes the car?
No, that
No,
wasn't
that's
that
from
one.
the-
This
yeah.
is like the final one where she finally decides that she's going to go back to her timeline, and then I'm pretty sure like after she does everything, and because like she went to go to Danielle's room and like say sorry for thinking you're like this when you're actually clearly a nice girl, and then finds out that she was cheating on Carter, and like she does all these things. I'm pretty sure she doesn't die this night. I'm pretty sure it doesn't do a fake out on her perfect run this time.
No, because remember she's at the restaurant when she finds out that Carter dies.
No, they were at the motel.
Oh, you're right. They're together at a different time.
Yeah.
You are right.
I'm pretty sure that I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure her perfect run where she does that this time doesn't get discarded like the first one does. I could be wrong, but from what I remember, I don't think so. The first one though, definitely like
Interesting.
She got scrapped after that perfect run because of the cupcake.
Yeah. So, sorry. Ugh. A yawn. Who would have thought I would have yawned? Very professional podcast,
By the way,
by the way.
killer. There was 2 of them this time. Scream fashion.
That was I
was
I
two.
hate to say it, but I expected 2 in masks, but kind of interesting that they didn't. Saw 1 killer coming. Thought the idea of 2 killers could happen.
Mhm.
Then it didn't. They waited until the last second, but then it really was. It was more of just like it seemed like she was there to help finish the job.
Yeah, it
Didn't
was
really seem like she was participating. Well, not throughout because it's the same day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was Gregory and his wife,
right.
which is funny because I love how he just turns on him.
Yeah, I know. He's like,
Oh,
"By the
turns
way,
on her. My
I
bad.
wanted a divorce.
Yeah, I want.
I love that. The one-liners in this movie, I think, land way better.
Screw you.
Should have went through his balls.
What was the one that? Yeah, you didn't like the one-liner in the first one where
Yeah.
she's like, "Safety's
Off. Thanks for the tip."
Yeah, yeah, you didn't
Yeah.
like that one. I remember you complaining
Yeah.
about that one last time.
But
Because I remember calling you out for being a nitpicker.
thankfully, the run got reset on that one. I'm glad. I would have quick saved and reloaded too. But anyway, with that being said, we're at about 53 minutes. Do we want to go into our final verdicts? Because I have one final topic I would like to talk about before we end. But
Yeah, for sure.
to keep it quick, actually, I'll let you go first.
Me first.
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
All right. I say you went first last time.
Yeah.
So you know what?
Yeah.
Let's do it that
We'll,
way.
we'll change it up.
Oh, my neck. Okay, so the first film, I rated it an 8. So, perfect slate 8. We do it out of a 10 scale here, of course, and
Yep.
I really like the first film. The first film is very, very fun, and as I stated, I'm pretty sure in this podcast today, I'm pretty sure that the first film I watched in theater, and that was the only time I ever watched that movie. And then we watched it again last week, and a lot of it I did remember, like the outcome, who the killer was, like the tree eating the cupcake and then waking back up, and
Yeah.
all that. I knew a lot of the like big main plot points of that movie, just a little smaller stuff I forgot. So all in all, I basically knew 90% of the first movie, and it was just as good as I remember it. And then this movie, I remembered literal nothing, and I didn't even remember the killer. I am a loser for not, but then again, I'm pretty sure this movie I only watched once as well. I don't know if I watched this one in theater. This might have been a DVD release for me, which this is why we're not getting a freaking third one. I failed.
I didn't see either of them in theaters.
We failed it. It's funny because like we both really like these movies.
This one made
So-
money. I mean, it was like a 9-something million budget with a 64 million.
That's really good though, and this is, I mean,
The first one was a lot.
A lot more.
It was because the first one had like half the budget. It was like 4.5 million.
And then made like probably more than.
And I think I want to say it made like over 100 million.
Yep,
so,
sounds about right.
Like,
and then since it went down and more of a budget, then they probably were like,
they were like,
which sucks because
cut our losses. Yeah,
I think a third one would definitely be awesome. It'd be
gonna
awesome
have to double check that now.
It'd be awesome to revisit these characters, revisit the setting, revisit the time loop idea. It's not like unique to Happy Death Day because again, like Groundhog and stuff, like we've seen movies that are like this. But there's something about this movie that's special to me, mainly because of the comedy. That's one thing I like in my horror movies.
Oh yeah,
horror movies is if they can hit off the comedy in a very well manner, I'm all in. And this is another movie franchise that strikes it very well.
Yeah.
But with the sequel here compared to the first one, again, we talked about the tone shifts, the whole entire movie shift of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're no longer in a mystery like horror-esque movie. We're kind of more in a like scientific sci-fi like. Discover this time loop more than again there's this killer and of course there's still your scenes with thriller slasher-ish stuff and the comedy again is carried over from the first to the sequel. There's a lot of similarities that obviously make it a sequel to Happy Death Day, but there's a lot of different variables put in here. And again, I know I'm going to let you get into your take here in a few. I didn't know if you would like this one since it was a lot different compared to the first one because I knew going into this one that it was different from what I remembered. I remembered that it was mainly focused on the time loop and this machine, and like that was the biggest focus over figuring out who this killer was, which was still a thing, but it was a side thing. But going into it, again, there's the montages are amazing. Tree is literally a top final girl, man. Sydney's my girl, but
I would put Tree one.
Tree might be my second right now. I'm not gonna lie.
Did I not say that? Or did I have...
I think you had Grace second.
I might have had Grace second.
But honestly, now that we've watched both of these back to back...
But personally, I'm those two above Sydney. So.
That's fair. But Tree, man. Tree's kind of clutching her way up my ranking for Final Girls right now.
That's what I'm saying.
She's a legend. And just her one-liners, her quips, just the way she can react on her feet. Like, heck, even the one time, like, when she first, like, dies, when she's getting chased off in the hospital or whatever, and she, like, runs off the roof by accident, she wakes up and she's like, oh, my God, rookie mistake. Like, just...
We love a clumsy queen. But to clarify, it was a $4.8 million budget and a $125.5 million box office for the first one.
For the first.
So it only made, 60 something.
Yeah, you said 60 something last time.
Yeah, $64.6 million with a $9 million budget.
That's still not bad.
It's not terrible.
Get studios seeing what the first one did compared to the sequel. Obviously, they're like, "Oh, cut it! It's not as good."
It did half the box office with
more
double the budget. Yeah.
Which sucks because the sequel was amazing and I actually really like it a lot. It's kind of hard for me to compare the two because they're both good for different reasons. I feel like there's a lot of positives in the first movie and there's a lot of positives in the sequel here.
Yeah.
Of course, our classic baby doll face returns. I know that was a thing you didn't really care for the look of the killer's outfit.
Right.
I do love how it's just literally an all black, like black hoodie and everything, and then just the face.
Right.
It looks cool. It looks neat. It gets the job done. Pretty clean. But all in all, time loop's still here. They end it pretty... it ends on a happy note. I love the whole Tree seeing her mom. We get to see that happen. We get to see that flourish, and then we see like her realize that this isn't her life. She shouldn't be here because all these memories aren't hers. All the memories from her pictures and like videos, home videos, it's not hers. It's the other Tree. And she's like, okay. And then she sits down, talks to her mom, and the mom gives her a lot of advice. And it's really touching.
Yeah.
It is a very emotional experience. And it's interesting seeing her have to pick between Carter and a person who literally was a stranger to her literally a day before.
Yeah.
Who literally risked his life to save her. Like, this guy clearly is a super nice guy and obviously loves her versus her mom that passed away that she obviously had a really huge connection with. So it's interesting to see her go back and forth between these characters and I don't know, all the new dynamics between these new old characters that are flipped on their head, different characters interacting with characters that you never saw in the first movie. Awesome. You know what?
Let's hear it.
It's really hard. You know what? This is really hard, but I'm gonna go with 8.5. I'll give it a 0.5.
0.5 higher.
0.5 because I really like the first one. I really, really like the first one, but I don't know if I like this one equally as good or just a smidge better.
All right.
So that's my opinion.
I take what you're saying and I internalize that. Very interestingly. With that being said,
Okay.
to keep my thoughts kind of short, because I felt like I have talked a lot throughout all of our segments.
Okay.
Keep all of that in mind if I miss anything in saying this. I think that the visuals do actually look pretty good in this movie. I think the CGI, there was quite a bit more in this movie, like the electric bathtub scene, or different moments like that.
I don't remember what the kill was, but it might have been the skydiving one, maybe. I don't remember, but the transition where she's like falling, and then like before she splatters, it shows like that portal open to the bed, and she's like
Yes.
falling through it. And
It's not that one. I know what you're talking about, but it's,
that was a cool shot.
Yes.
There's a lot of cool shots in this movie.
yes. So definitely cool stuff like that. It felt like the vision was fully realized, especially even with the technological stuff with the sissy machine or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And as production values increase, we see that same sense of style and atmosphere with the campus, the characters on the campus. We get to see kind of the inversion of a lot of these characters as living different but parallel lives in the alternate timeline. And overall, outside of something that you've talked about, is that the lower emphasis on the killer and what I believe is some jarring pacing of the movie that really just kind of like it messes up your biological clock in a way. Like when you turn back the clocks and you're like, it's time to go to bed. It's like 6 p.m. or whatever, or
Yeah.
like something like that. That's how this movie makes you feel. It's like, it's time to start wrapping things up, but it's not.
I was gonna say I didn't really have any pacing issues too much of myself, other than the one instance that I mentioned earlier. But I understand where you come from.
That's the worst one, and that one just felt more of an unnecessary scene that could have been cut
Yeah.
for the sake of time if it needed to be. But I don't know. For the rest of it, it's more of just the feel. Like it's not like an official problem. It's not like oh my god, this is gonna ruin this movie for you.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like a feel thing. Like if I had to make any improvements, I would find a way to restructure some of the scenes, maybe even a few of them in different orders to make it line up better, which I know a lot of it chronologically couldn't happen in different orders, but some of it I'm sure could be reworked. But that's not why they pay me to edit movies.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? So, with all that being said, I really enjoy a lot of the inversions on expectations in this movie, and outside of the few minor issues I have, I enjoy this movie as both a sequel and a movie overall, and it's definitely one of the more enjoyable films that I've watched, especially the duology of films together. And with that being said, I gave the first movie a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I was a little bit lower than you. You had an 8.
8. Yep.
I'm going to put this movie at an 8
Okay.
out of 10.
So a point up.
So I'm going up.
A point.
I like this one more, though I will say there is a clear shift in genre once again. Spook,
like I say,
mystery to sci-fi.
even though
I lean sci-fi.
Even
So-
though there is the split in genre there, it's not like a big gap to where like the identity's still there. Like,
No.
like I said, you can definitely tell this is a sequel to
Yes,
the original Happy Death Day.
absolutely.
And
That's
like I said,
where I think the characters.
yeah,
bring
that
it
really
through.
shine and bring
Yeah.
through. Yeah, because it's not like a super split to where like it feels like a completely different movie and could be called something else. Like it's
Right.
still Happy Death Day. It's just their tone and like their focus was on something different than what the original was, and it worked very well.
In my case, it worked out for me. I love the the heavy emphasis on like these sci-fi
I dug
concepts.
it. But like I said, even though they definitely dug more into the sci-fi concepts and focusing on the loophole stuff that wasn't focused on in the first film, the things that you would have liked from the first film, like the killer, the comedy, and like the characters,
Yep.
they all come back. All that stuff is still there. And though things like the killer are kind of sidelined more, still there. You can still try to guess who the killer is. They still plant some seeds. You can still guess. You can still nitpick through, and you can still laugh, have a fun
Right.
time, see all your characters from the first movie come back, and build more characterization, build more character, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I was gonna say it's really good. It's a really good movie, and honestly, I want a third one.
I do too. I hope they do. I saw as I was searching for stuff that in the chance that it would happen, I know it's like up in the air of if the movie would happen or not.
Yeah.
Wikipedia says it is an active development, but a news headline said that it wasn't due to the reception of the last one. But I guess it was said at one point that it would be an apocalyptic movie. So probably timelines get ruined.
That'd be interesting though.
Here's my, and this is how I wanted to end the video. What would your pitch for a third movie be? And without knowing that,
No, not knowing that.
my pitch would be that two people are pulled into the loop at once.
It would be
Carter and Tree.
Carter and Tree.
They both have to die for the loop to reset.
That would be interesting. I
So
think that would be a cool concept.
I think inherently that means that one character stays dead at the end. Only because, well, or at least you could fake it out like that if you really wanted to, have a happy ending. But at the end, let's say there's something
Kind of like let's say that this was implemented in the first movie, kind of like the cupcake. Let's say Tree was the one to eat it, she dies, but then the night's over, so the loop's over, but Carter still lives. Something per se like that, where like a character dies, but then the loop maybe ends if you live through the night.
Well,
Something of that sort. But like we've never actually made it through the night to see if it would even end through a full
not
night.
properly.
We've never
Yeah.
actually fully seen that, so we always just assume that it would keep going anyway
yeah,
until they die.
it could be. I mean, it's either that or they just right at 12:01 they get hit with like an insurmountable amount of sleep, like deprivation, and they just pass out.
They've never really tackled that idea.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting idea to tackle in a third one, honestly.
Right.
But I don't know what.
Questions to be answered, to be sure. But that was kind of my final thing I want to talk about. I was going to talk about the Mario movie, but as we're running a little low on time, maybe for the next episode we'll cover that, just as like a small little segment where it's a kids movie. We're not going to dedicate a whole episode to it.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll talk about that, and that's going to be actually before this episode. I didn't even think about it because we'll probably want to put out Evil Dead first, right?
If that's what we're gonna do, you say we're watching Evil Dead.
I mean, why not? I'm down. So
Yeah. works for me.
technically, this is now episode 13. Sorry,
Rit.
I didn't think about it until now. But episode 12 will now be Evil Dead Rise. I've never seen any of the Evil Dead movies. You could honestly argue if I'm
Groovy.
even... It's the guy from Fortnite. Okay, anyway, that is pretty much it for us. Hello from the past, as you've seen stuff that we make in the future already. Goodbye. Yes.
Farewell. Hope none of you get stuck in a time loop yourselves, and if you do, have some fun with it.
Watch us the whole time. YouTube knows.
Peace out.